medication.
But everyone thinks we're just gonna get started.
She was buying them in Florida. She never got them from Texas.
We're gonna start because it's 8:30, more people will come, obviously, as always. So I'm very happy today to introduce Rosemary Bakker. So Ms. Bakker is a certified interior designer and gerontologist and has over 30 years of experience promoting the role of the home environment in the health, function, and well-being of older adults. She was on the academic staff at Cornell, Division of Geriatrics for 14 years, and now is consulting for health advocates for older people, a nonprofit in New York City, where she has the program Living Comfortably and Safely at Home. So she has lots of experience. She's written extensively about this topic, and looking forward to having her speak to us today about some of the work.
It's really a pleasure and an honor to be here, and I'm going to share with you the work that I've been doing. But first, no, I have no associations, financial associations or any associations with the companies that I'm going to talk about today or any of the products that I'm going to talk about today. So as you just heard, I was in the Division of Geriatrics at Cornell for 14 years, and here's a picture of my giving a talk with Dr. Aide, who's one of the co-chiefs of the Division of Geriatrics, on a physician's and interior designer's advice on aging well. So the thought is that the environment is really a key component of geriatric care management, and a key component of living healthy and safe at home. So I started a task force when I was at Weill Cornell, and I headed up the program called Environmental Geriatrics. One of the things that we found out, 4 key issues came up, or misconceptions. If a person was having a hard time functioning at home, say getting in and out of bed, or even getting in and out of the chair, the bathtub, we thought it was just because they were getting older. We didn't look to see the interaction between who they are and their environment. So if today you were designing a bathroom for a 90-year-old, you really wouldn't put in a bathtub with high walls or jacuzzi tub. So we have to look at the interaction, not just think it's the older person who has a health condition. We're seeing a lot more frailty and a lot more cases of dementia, so it's complicating a person's ability to live alone or to follow instruction. And a lot of providers just aren't aware of options, and I'm going to show you a lot of options today in terms of providing for better accessibility at home and inaccessible dwellings. A lot of walk-ups. I know a lot of your visiting doc program, you do 2, 3, 4, 5 floor walk-ups. I work a lot with visiting nurse service in Chinatown. We do a lot of walk-ups, and that's a real issue. But not only is the building inaccessible to get into, but also very small living spaces. I took a look at what your goals were for some of your programs that you're having with your home modification and repair program. And one of the things I'm going to talk about today, and one of our main goals, is we really want to increase accessibility in the space for people using wheelchairs and walkers. We know fall risk is huge with this population. So I go in and I do a visual suite to look at the 4 or 5 fall risks that I work with. I want to look at transferring. How are they getting in and out of the chair? I just was visiting a client yesterday and he had a fall out of his chair. And so, we talked about it. And it's a very deep, low chair. So that's one of the first things on our top solutions is finding a chair that'll make them safer with transferring. We want them to be as independent as possible. That's key to their well-being. And we have a lot of caregivers involved. And we want to make sure we're not putting the caregiver at risk. So I thought I would present a few cases to you today because we always learn well by looking at cases. And this was one, I'm going to call her Mrs. T, an 88-year-old female. I worked with the social workers and the nurses in this particular case. Lived alone, but had really strong support. She used a walker. She had a personal emergency response system, which was terrific. She wore it, which is very unusual. She had been hospitalized twice in the last 6 months. She had 2 falls. and she had COPD. Okay, so this all is going to show you what I found in the environment. I didn't meet her until she returned home, which is also a lot what happens if they had a fall and they're in the hospital or doing rehab. So my goals, as we mentioned before, accessibility, reduce environmental risk factors. We really needed to help her get in and out of the bed and bath. And she was fiercely independent. She was a Holocaust survivor. She wanted at all costs to do what she could on her own. Okay, you probably can't see this very well, but this is a perfect example of the small bathrooms we encounter, postage size stamp, in New York City. The good thing about this one, though, is that it had no built-in vanity underneath. And I'll show you why that was important. So it was a wall-hung sink. But how is somebody going to get in here with the walker? That wasn't going to happen. The doorway was 21 inches. So a couple of things. Beforehand, there was a door to the bathroom. Most people have them. She lived alone. But she agreed to removing the door because the door takes up 2 inches of space. And by removing the door, we were able to increase accessibility for her. And we put grab bars on the outside. So most of us think of grab bars on the tub wall, right? So you hold on, because you never want a person to get off balance without holding on to something. And it shouldn't be a wet sink, and it shouldn't be a slippery tile wall. So you want a good grab bar there. But grab bars are also great in many different locations, and this one was outside the bathroom. What we noticed, and I worked with her PT in rehab, was that she could ambulate still, but she had to hold on everywhere. So she kept her walker outside, she had grab bars to hold on to outside, another picture here, and we added a fabric door, so we got a heavy velvet curtain, and we put that up, so it gave a sense of privacy. She helped pick out the color. It's very important to get client control and choice. And how well can you see these vertical poles in the back? Can you see them? Okay, yeah. So a lot of companies began to realize, or product designers, that sometimes there wasn't a place on the wall to put a grab bar. Sometimes you need it in the middle of the room. So like our subway poles, there are standing vertical poles. And we put one in front of the toilet, so when she got off the toilet, she had a pole to hold on to. And when she went into the bathroom, when she let go of the grab bar outside, she could hold on to the standing pole inside. We got her buy-in on everything that we did before we did it. That was a key component. When you go into an environment, you really want to get client acceptance. You don't want to go in there and say, I'm going to do all this. You really want to find what the key things are to do. You don't want to overwhelm the patient and get their buy-in. So here she had a regular bath chair, but she had a very difficult time getting into the bath chair. Got her a swiveling, sliding seat so she could just sit on the edge like the social worker is right there and slide around into the bathtub. And what was wonderful, she was able to do this because there was no sink vanity there. So she could swing her legs under the sink. And here we are, we had an adult son who was terrific, installing everything. Key component when you do home visits and you come up with the plan of care for the environment and the person, who's going to buy the equipment, who's going to install it. You know, the people you're visiting are not going to be the ones to do this. A lot of them don't even have internet, and sometimes when I ask them about, do they have an Amazon account, you know? So, and a lot of these products do come from Amazon, or occasionally Medicaid will pay for something. So now we're testing out the seat to see, okay, how easy is it for a caregiver to swivel mom around? And we were having a difficult time with the clamp. You can't just take something out of a box and install it. There's a lot of fine tuning that you have to do. And this is really key for something to work. And I'll show you a good example of this. So one of our main goals was looking at the bedroom. That's where she sat. And She had fallen over the commode because she couldn't make it to the bathroom at night. And the commode was at the bottom of the bed. So easy to tip over if you have low vision, you're feeling a little dizzy at night. So one of our main goals, client to reach commode safely without letting go of any hand support. So what we did was we took one of our great vertical poles there, we put it next to the bed, and we put the commode next to the night table and the wall. She did not, and a lot of patients do not want commodes next to their bed, but they may accept nearby. So we installed this vertical pole. The best part about this pole, it has a horizontal bar. So not only can you help get up by holding onto the bar, but you can hold onto the pole and you can walk with the pole in its horizontal position. But what I came in, the son had installed the bar and I thought terrific. But I somehow assumed he was going to read the instructions on how to position it, and he didn't. So he had put it way too close to the wall. It's supposed to be next to the patient's hip when she sits up, and he put the horizontal bar way too high. She was, 5'4". So we had to reinstall it, and we did. But had this been counted in a research study and nobody looked at the instructions, it would have been probably seen as it wasn't working, but it's not because it wasn't working. It's just all of this really needs to be looked at. And the instructions are like 8 pages, so you really have to know what to look at. So we were able to do it, and our goal was achieved. She could get out of bed, use the commode at night. She had been living there for 3 years, not another fall. So that was pretty terrific. And then we just said, okay, let's take a look around. Let's put some night lights around. So we got some LED night lights that weren't too bright because she was a low light type of person, and they didn't bother her, so that was good. And then when we saw, okay, she's walking across the room like this, holding on to one of the tables, we wanted to help the patient kind of keep her regular routines that make them safer. But we noticed there was all this stuff on that table, so we just rearranged it. And we gave her a surface so she could hold on to it while she used cane if she wasn't using her walker. So you take a look for clutter. You want to rearrange a few things. We saw some clutter in the corner. We rearranged that. And this was very interesting. She had a beautiful oriental area carpet in the living room. And, area carpets are one of the key ways an older person can fall. And particularly if they're using a walker, sometimes the walker, half of it's on the carpet, half of it's on the wood floor. Your gait changes depending on the floor surface you're walking on. Walking on 2 floor surfaces at the same time is not good. So what we decided was, instead of removing the carpet, we just moved it out of the main walkway. So she could come and she could sit on the sofa, which you can't see, and she was absolutely fine with that. So you don't have to get rid of everything. Sometimes just a little fine tuning. So just to sum up some of the things that we did in here, key things was removing the bathroom door, adding a handheld shower, making it real safe. She came back really nervous about navigating her household, and what she said was, or the son responded, "My mother loves the bars and poles." She felt very safe because there was something to hold on to wherever she went. So this was one case that I worked on, and shows you a broad range where we were basically looking at a lot of fall prevention and safer mobility and safer transferring. She had very, very mild dementia, so this was an easier case, and she came back with home care, and she was able to remain at home for 3 more years, and the total cost was $740, and she had a budget for it, and it was wonderful we had the adult son. So what happens when you don't have an adult son? So we're going to go to our next client, Miss S. Okay. This was a much more difficult case. She lived in New York. She had a 24-hour live-in Aide. She used a walker, but she sat in a wheelchair all day long, and it's one of the reasons that I was brought in. She had just started to get pressure ulcers. She was in stage 2. She wasn't getting out of her chair, and we'll see why. She had a history of falls resulting in 2 fractures, both in the bedroom. She had severe dementia. So I went with her geriatric care nurse as part of the NORC system they had in this building. And goals are very similar: to reduce fall risk, to increase retransfer. But this was a new one. It's the first time ever I was brought in to a consultation to reduce pressure ulcer incidence. She got extremely agitated when she was touched, so we had to be very careful about that. That was one of the reasons it was having difficulty transferring her. And she has one main caregiver. Nobody was really educating her on how to relate to this woman with severe dementia. Okay, so here's a picture of Miss S, I think I called her. So she sat all day long in her wheelchair, all day long. And this was the chair she used to use. It's a swivel chair, it's very low indeed. So when the aide would transfer into this chair, the chair would spin around, she would get very scared, and it was very difficult transferring her in and almost impossible getting her out, so the aide just stopped. So here I am with Marie, the geriatric care nurse. We went shopping in a local department store here, together looking for a chair that her daughter was going to pay for. Her daughter was a long-distance caregiver. And we both checked it out, and one of the things that we know, in order to get out of a chair comfortably, you've got to be able to tuck your feet under the chair. It can't be too low and deep. You have to put your nose above your toes to do that. So this was a good example of a wing chair that we purchased for Marie. And you can see the before and you can see the after. And I felt very pleased because we took a look at Marie, we trained the caregiver just a little bit about the chair. And then I get a call from Marie saying, the daughter says the mother is so agitated that she's screaming when she's in the chair. And the daughter wants us to take it back. And I'm thinking, what could have happened? I sat in that chair. So is it the chair? You know, I said, Marie, let's not return the chair just yet. Let me come up and take a look. So I go up and I take a look, and I see Marie in the chair. We had been doing all day, not Marie, Miss S. All day long, she was engaged in a book in her hands, and she couldn't read, but she just flipped the pages all day long. So this repetitive motion was very important to her, and for people with severe dementia, you find that quite often, and it kind of, you know, got her focused. So now that she was sitting in her new chair, the aide put soap operas on, and she was now sitting in front of the TV watching soap operas all day long, which of course she couldn't follow. So when I went there, I said, hey, where's her book? And so we got her book, she held the book, we turned the TV off, and she engaged in that repetitive motion. And there was no more problem with the chair. She could get in and out of the chair, she no longer was screaming. So you need to look at the person, you know, their physical function, their emotional function. You need to look at the environment, and you need to look at the caregiver. Everyone has to be trained. So we trained the aide then. We spent time with her, and she was also very happy because it's very difficult being with somebody who has severe dementia who screams a lot. And so we also trained her before she was to transfer Miss S to tell her, now I'm going to put my hand on your shoulder, okay? And now I'm going to, so let her know each step of the way and say it in a very reassuring voice. So all of this comes into her care, because it's very easy if she's very agitated for her to take a fall. And then we would have blamed it on the dementia and maybe the chair, but there was a key component missing here. Okay. We seem to be a little stuck. The other thing I just want to bring out to you here while we're on this, let's stay on this a little bit longer. You can see your Miss S's feet. You cannot get out of the chair in your feet in that position. So we taught the aide to tell her, well, is it okay, I'm going to tuck your foot in or tap on the floor and say, can you move your foot here? You know, so we got her all propped, ready to go to assist in the transfer. And that's really key. Her body no longer knew how to position itself. Like, you would never position yourself like that if you were about to get up. It's just impossible. So keep on. Okay, so did the battery die on us?
The whole thing froze.
Oh.
This happened last week.
Did it really?
It was
Okay.
fried. Our apologies. My son's waiting.
Okay, all right.
Sorry.
Terrific. Okay, thanks. Okay. And then we, again, at the same department store, took a look around, found one dining chair, and this was the amazing thing. In this department store, we found only one sitting chair that was an almost ergonomic fit and one dining chair. Most dining chairs don't have arms all the way out to the side, so much easier to get up. So a lot of times it's hard to find these furnishings for older people, but we also got her a dining chair so she wouldn't have to sit in that wheelchair all day. Then we took a look around and we found this place had not been kept up for many years, and there were really old rugs and you could easily get your foot under. So there are a couple of ways you can fall on an area carpet. I've done both. Sometimes when I go to clients and I walk around, I find myself slipping and tripping because I'm not used to the space. So this is one way. When the carpet is not glued to the floor, your foot can go under and then you fall forward because you lose your balance. And we know balance skills can really decrease in older adults. So what I can pull myself up and right myself, a lot of older adults can't. You know, I remember working with one gentleman who had Parkinson's, and he said to me, you know, a couple of years ago when I was about to have a fall, I could stop it. You know, I go right down. So we want to really watch out for that. The other way you can fall is that if there's no padding underneath and you walk across, the carpet can slip and buckle and down you can go. My instructions were to get some double-sided tape and put it under the carpet, but they put tape on top, and it seemed to be fine. I always wondered, is that tape a little slippery? Because sometimes you can come up with a solution, and then the solution becomes the problem. But so far, there were no hazards reported from tape on top. And then sometimes you take up carpets, you know. This one was literally falling apart. It was disintegrating as you walked on it, so we removed the carpet. Once in a while when I'm there, I'll just do it, you know. Sometimes I try to call the super up, you know. I try to bring some gloves with me, you know, a bottle of some kind of sanitizer. But sometimes if you wait, it's not going to happen. Or sometimes if I get the client buy-in, I'll say, could we try it for 1 week? 1 week. And if you don't like it, we can put it back, you know. And sometimes I'm able to say, you know, do you have a granddaughter or a good friend who might really benefit from this? Or can we find a goodwill? And sometimes that helps because they don't think their possession then will be thrown out. And then, of course, the bedroom again. In both of the cases we're looking at, there were 2 falls in the bedroom. So we go into the bedroom, we take a look. The right bed was the bed that the aide sometimes slept in. Miss S did not always like the aide sleeping in her room. So sometimes her level of agitation was so great the aide would sleep in the living room. And her balance wasn't good at all, and she needed to use a walker, but she would get up in the middle of the night, of course, not remembering she needed to use a walker, and getting out of bed and just going from a laying to a sitting up to a walking posture caused a fall. So considering it was the location for 2 falls, we wanted to look at this. So there are a lot of different ways to provide transferring support for an older person. So this was one bed handle that I liked because it clamped on to the side of the bed. It rested on the floor, and there was no strap going under a mattress. So I remember I held a focus group with physical therapists one time when I was at Weill Cornell, and we talked about bed handles, different types of bed handles. And a lot of people recommended that handle with the strap, and the strap goes under the mattress. But occasionally, if you sit on the edge of the bed, the mattress, depending on the mattress you have, can lift up. So a couple of physical therapists told me that they had clients who had falls using bed handles with straps that go under the mattress. This one I have found to hold up over time. And so the nurse and I installed this. It took us 15 minutes. It was not difficult at all, but we got it done right then and there, and that was very helpful. Now, can you see it in the back, the bed handle on the right? Okay, so I like this bed handle because it basically looks like something you could hold onto. So somebody with severe dementia may not be confused by something new in their environment. And that's always key. You want to make sure that when you're working with people who have dementia, not to make too many changes they're going to notice, but that the change you make isn't that odd that it'll either upset them, but you don't want a person to feel trapped in bed, so you a lot of times don't want to use side rails because somebody may try to climb over them or feel trapped. And this bed rail worked really well for Miss S. And we showed her how to use it. So we brought her into the room, we put her on the side of the bed, the caregiver was there, and then Marie showed her how to then use the walker. So this was a real success, and she had not had another fall, and it's been, again, about 4 years since we did this. So sometimes one simple intervention or a combination of them can be really effective. Now, since the aide was sometimes sleeping in the living room, she didn't always know when Miss S was getting up at night. So what we did was we got a simple motion sensor that went under the bed. And the caregiver had a remote receiver that didn't sound an alarm that can be terrifying. It sounded a really nice door chime. So she was able then to get to Miss S before she got out of bed because Mrs. S was a little slow in moving. So this was very effective. And it also was very effective when the aide slept in the room. Because sometimes if you're in a deep sleep, you don't hear somebody get out of bed. And it was, I said, a nice sounding chime. So a product like this was $40 or $50 and helped the aide felt like she was doing her job better. And it protected Miss S more. So I noticed that the space was very dark at night. And I talked to the aide and she said, oh no, Miss S doesn't like any light at night. She won't tolerate it. So you always want to come in with the attitude, let's explore. Let's see if this might possibly work. So I did not go in with a very bright LED light. I went in with a soft LED light and it worked. So when I asked the aide, and the follow-up visits are so important, She said, you know what, she didn't mention a thing. So I guess it's fine. So sometimes you're told something as a fact. You always want to dig further down with that. And lighting is really crucial. So we know that people with dementia have problems with depth perception. We also know that people with low vision and people with dementia have 2 to 4 times more falls than a normal, healthy senior. So you really want to look at the light. And the important thing about light, it's not just the lumens or how much light you have. It should be kind of glare-free. So you don't want really bright, hot light because it can be very blinding to a person. So if a person has low vision and you have a bright white night light, that can be blinding to them. So these night lights are better. And then of course I take a look in the bathroom and I notice so often that there's a towel on the floor. And I remember once helping my mother have a bath shower when she was living in assisted living. She was in mid-stage Alzheimer's now, and they had given her a towel to place on the floor. And I remember when I was helping her shower, the towel was on the floor. She said to me, and she wasn't speaking all that much right now, these were her like exact words, "Look at that towel. You could break your neck on it." And I remember thinking, wow, wisdom still remains, you know? So right. So we got a bath mat with a non-skid rug. And I remember working with the CEO of the foundation that has funded me in the past. And her mother was healthy up until the day she fractured her hip. And it happened in a 90-degree move. So she had a cotton rug at her sink, and she went like this. And she went like this. She didn't lift up her feet enough. The cotton rug all bunched, and she fell. It just takes one thing, one motion like that, and that sort of changed her life. So I always tell people, you know, I'm here to help you now, but I'm also here to look at 5 or 10 years out, and I want you to be as safe as possible. So I make simple recommendations. Finding the funding isn't always easy. Even $20 can be a lot. So a lot of agencies have something called, they're an almoner. My name just got put out to become an almoner. So I have a little pool of money I can give out to prevent crises with older people. And that's wonderful. And I would say that I work with a lot of social agencies in New York. Like I work with Chinatown NOR, VNS. I work with Dorot and the Actors Fund. And they are my clients. And I go out with them on a home visit. And I write up a report for them. Almost all of them are almoners. And they have little pots or pools of money that they can fund, $50, $100, up to maybe $800 over a lifetime. This is critical because I go into a lot of dire environments and they don't have $50 to spend. And you don't want to just go in and do the assessment. I've done that before. You want to implement it. So I only go to places where I know it can be implemented. So, and then as I was looking around, I noticed that on the shelf, there was cleaning fluid right next to mouthwash and to soap. And, you know, this isn't all the home safety manuals. You just don't think you're ever going to see it. It was the first time in like my 25 years that I actually ever saw this. And simple, just remove it and like keep it away. But it was shocking to see this in an environment with somebody who had severe dementia. So you are the second or third pair of eyes, and nobody else is looking for this. And sometimes if a person lives alone and they don't have much family support, you need to have an extra pair of eyes and an extra heart that really cares for the welfare of people, because everybody is kind of maxed out in their own roles, and a lot of aides don't see themselves, if they're not trained, as being the home safety expert too. So this was really doing your due diligence. So if we take a look at what was done here, you know, we installed, you know, transfer handle, but this one was different than the other one. instead of doing a vertical pole with a horizontal rod, which was perfect for that person, she had to go a distance when she got out of the bed. With Miss S, having a simple bed handle was better. We added night lights, motion sensors, simple things, no cost. That often happens where there's a lot you can do for no cost. Taking down carpets, and material costs approximately $620. A lot of the home visits I go on, the material cost may be $80 or $100. When I go down to Chinatown, I would say most of my home visits are around the $100. Once in a while, I will recommend a new mattress. Some people haven't had new mattresses for over 40 years. And when I go in to do a home assessment, I always ask, may I go into your room? You know, may I sit on your bed? May I sit on your chair? That's really, really important how you do it. Sometimes there's great resistance to making changes. And I have known a few geriatricians in my time who would put on their prescription pad, you know, install a grab bar in the bathroom, or remove area carpets. This is really part of their care at home. And if you run into resistance and you really need to give them choices, you need to say, okay, let's see what we can do now and what we may come back to in 6 months. I always tell people I will be back if their needs change, or I'll do a follow-up visit. I went to visit a patient yesterday, and he had some severe back issues and several surgeries, so he never had any diagnosis. And I said to him, okay, so let me see your sleeping area. And he said, I sleep here. And he was sitting in this big, old lounge chair. That was a recliner, but there was like all this space, you know, where his lower back should be getting support. And I remember thinking, does he have a back issue, or is the chair causing the back issue? Because this is where he's sleeping. So there's usually a combination. But I said to him, you know, if you would like, I'd be very happy. I'll take a picture of you in this chair as you're sleeping. I'll take a picture of you in the so you can show your surgeon. He has surgery coming up next month. And you're planning on sleeping in this lounge chair after surgery, your back surgery. Okay, so why not? You're going to need to get approval. How about that? You show this to your surgeon to see if he approves it. So maybe we need to get you a hospital bed before you or while you're having surgery, or we need a new sleep chair. But so what I was talking about before our session started is a team approach. So I always work with social workers or nurses or physicians, surgeons, when we deal with situations like this. Sometimes I'll meet the person's physical therapist there and say, listen, I've watched them get in and out of the bathtub. This is where I would put the grab bars, but I don't assess function. So how about we do this together? So it's a complex situation, and usually one person's eyes aren't enough. So I got this patient's buy-in that we're going to go out next week after he checks in with the surgeon to look at exploring possibilities. And one of the things, I don't have a photo of this here, we're going to do, so I'm going to do a tub cut for him. So he owns his co-op, but you can also do it in a rental. So what a tub cut is you take out part of the tub wall, you get a specialist to come in, they remove the tub wall and they leave about a 6-inch curve. Now most bathtubs are around 14 to 18 inches, and that's really high for a person to climb over. So this way, in effect, in a half a day, you are taking that bathtub and making it into a walk-in shower. The cost is around $1,400. They reglaze it, they solder, they put on side panels. You cannot tell, depending on the company you use, anything has been done. And the best part is it can be put back. So I've seen it put back to where, again, you can't tell anything's been done. Because I saw him, because his son was there, I felt safe enough to watch him get into the bathtub, and he was a wreck. And I thought, okay, so I am here to help you be safe now, and he wanted the home visit. And I'm also here looking at 5, 10 years out. Your goal is age in place here. Let's get you the safest bathroom possible. So we're now looking at a tub cut. That can be done when he goes for surgery. Because when you get a tub cut, there's a very strong glazing odor. If you have any kind of COPD, it's not good. And I'm very sensitive to chemical smells. So sometimes certain things you might recommend, let's widen the doorway. Do you have any idea the construction dust that goes to every surface in that living space, even if you use plastic sheets, every surface? And so in the first case, you saw Mrs. T coming home from rehab where we established and put in the vertical poles. We did not widen the doorways because she had a severe case of COPD, and we just thought, let's not do it. And we were able to do it by taking the bathroom door off. So winding up here, I wanted to kind of finish with this. This is Mr. B, and his brother brought me into this project, and he was falling in the living room. He had Lewy body and severe, and this oriental carpet now became a floor surface with cut up pieces of paper for him. And so when he walked the floor, he wanted to bend down and pick up every piece of paper. He also had severe Parkinson's, and he was kyphotic, and when he was like this and he bent, he would go down. And so I developed a nice rapport with him. I told him I would like to change the carpet, and I brought him 2 choices. I knew his favorite color was blue, so I brought him a light blue and a slightly darker blue. Made it real easy on him. I gave him the 2, and he chose this carpet here. And that was really wonderful because I had his buy-in. It made me feel good that I was making a decision for him, and the behavior totally stopped. So, you know, we might have just blamed it on the Lewy body and not like decided to change the carpet. But changing something in the environment can reduce behaviors that need to be reduced for your patient's safety. Well, I'm glad, oh, here we go, okay, terrific. So when we take a look at working with patients and older adults, we really need to look at the person. I did a home assessment for a woman who desperately needed grab bars. She had had a stroke, was having the most difficult time getting into her bathtub, but aesthetically she didn't want any. And I asked her what her favorite color was, and she said purple. And I found an Italian company that made a purple grab bar. So we got her grab bars. Some people say, I couldn't care less what it looks like. I just want to be safe. So know who your patient is. Know who you're working with. Unique behaviors. You know, you need to know, like for Mr. T, that his Lewy body was causing him to pick up perceived pieces of paper. So you look at the problem and you say, how can I solve this? You couldn't just take the carpet away. He really wanted a carpet. So we solved that. Health, like I said, team process. I'm now having the patient I saw yesterday talk to his surgeon, get it approved. So we're a team here. The caregiver, you know, that's really a key component, whether it's a spouse, an adult child, or an aide. You need to bring them in on this. And the living space. What can you do in the living space? Do they own it? Do you need permission from the building management? It's like today, if you have grab bars installed anywhere, you need $2 million, certificates of liability that should be shown to the building management almost across the board. So you just take a look at what you're working with and you do your best. Once in a while, I'll say, okay, maybe we're good for the next 6 months or a year, but we really need to think about you're moving out to another place because this isn't, you're going to be totally homebound here, and we need to, are you willing to accept that, or do you want to be able to be part of your community? So we do the best we can with what we're working with, and we always go in with that sense of respect, asking them, for their feedback, giving them choices, and making it kind of an exciting adventure. Wow, look what we're doing. We can keep you here for as long as possible and make you comfortable. You know? So I just want to open it up for a few minutes if you have any questions or comments or any difficult situations that you're working with yourselves. Yes?
Thank you very much. Well, one question I have. So a lot of us who work in the office and are not going to patients' homes. So one thing we do a lot is refer to BNS for home assessments.
Right.
And we often get requests back. Oh, can you prescribe grab bar,
Oh,
prescribe this.
okay.
And we do that, but
Uh-huh.
we don't really see like what
Mm.
happens with it. So I'm wondering, and when you mentioned about like the importance of it being installed correctly, it made me think like, so when BNS goes to do that or recommends that, are they relying on like patient family members to install it, or are they looking at it after, like, or do they plan to like reassess? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so that's a good question, and I think it's a mixture of them all. When I work with VNS, I work in Chinatown, and everyone in Chinatown qualifies for this free government installation of grab bars, and they're very well trained and they know what to do. It's a service that you know about called MetroCare, and if you have an income of $25,000 or less for one person, it's about $50,000 for a couple. They will come in and supply the grab bars and install them. And they will also install your own grab bars. So when I'm with VNS, we always use that particular company. Now, it's interesting. I've been doing this now for 25 years, 30 years, and only one time did a grab bar fall out, and that was because it was put into plain wall board. Most of the time when you're in a bathroom, you're in tile walls. So I have not found it to become an issue, though I'm not collecting data, but I'm out in the community. Most people super do it. If the super doesn't do it, some people don't want to accept the liability. But most of the time, like I had my super install mine, and he used a really nice anchor bolt. I watched him install it. But I'm curious about that too, how they're installing it. But when I go out with VNS again, we use a very reputable company. Yes?
So I have a question about the limitations that have come across with Medicare and Medicaid. With these costs that are incurred, what are the resources do low-income people have to acquire these?
So you need to have somebody become an almoner or get foundation grants. So with the VNS that I work with in Chinatown, they are both almoners and they write small grants to certain foundations. So when I go out now with an agency, most of them have their own little pool of money. One agency doesn't. I'm thrilled because now I'm going to be their little pool of money. So you need to have someone become an almoner and find access to money. There's nothing worse than, going somewhere, like I've bought things for people. You go into their home environment and it's dire there. And you think they're really not going to get this for $30, or $20? And you feel like, how can you in good conscience, walk out of there and not get them something? Particularly if it's high fall risk or it's a high fire risk. I've seen both, but mostly it's fall risk. So I would recommend that you find, I know a lot of people get some funding from the DK Foundation, DE, second word K-A-Y, DK Foundation. But a lot of foundations are constantly changing their grant giving guidelines, but they fund people in dire need. And to become an almoner, I have to take an oath that I will only give money to people in dire need. It's not meant for someone who just doesn't want to go into, ask their adult son or something who's very wealthy, perhaps. But it should be somebody who really has need. But a lot of people I see do have need. So that's what I would recommend. It is not effective to spend your time doing these evaluations if it can't be funded. Yeah.
We have quite a few patients who can't get through their doorway with their wheelchair.
Which doorway?
Their doorway to the kitchen.
The kitchen,
or the
okay.
bathroom. And I was wondering if you have any insights on how you can address that.
That's a really tricky one. So there are laws. So there's something called the Equal Access Law in New York City. and it's run out of New York City Human Rights Commission. So I have gone to building owners, and I have given them these pamphlets, and I have told them that they have to create an environment of equal access for all individuals, including people with wheelchairs. So I have had certain building owners widen doorways for free. Now, it depends, the law, if it's going to be an unnecessary financial hardship for the owner. But to widen a doorway is tricky because you can't really live there while that doorway's being widened. One, the noise and the dust, you have to have an alternative place for someone. Sometimes there's a family member, sometimes it's a hotel. But I've also used swing clear hinges. So I just did a consult with someone who had a contractor in. This was a private consult, personal contact, and they were going to widen the doorway. And the wife was coming back like in a week. And I said, no, you don't need to widen the doorway. There's a hinge called swing clear. It doesn't work everywhere. But what it does is I'm going to just show you with this door here. I don't know if I'm off camera, I'm sure I am. Okay, so here we have a hinge. You can see this is a regular hinge. There's this much space that door is taking up. With the swing clear hinge, you can push the door back. So the hinge moves to the side, and this whole door goes back 2 inches. So you would be able to do it here because you have space to move the door back. That 2 inches can make all the difference getting somebody in with a wheelchair. If not, then you have to look at a smaller wheelchair. So there are some smaller wheelchairs and there are some bigger wheelchairs. So I have seen some patients in really big wheelchairs and they're not going to get through any door. So I would recommend that you measure the size of the width of the wheelchair and you see how many inches is it off. Is it 2 inches, 1 inch, 5 inches? Most kitchen doorways are around 28 inches, 26. You should be able to get a wheelchair through there if you can get a swing clear hinge, but the person may have to be very careful with their elbows or they may need to be pushed in. You can get smaller wheelchairs, but again, depending on the girth and what fits for that person. So there are ways to do it without widening, but sometimes you have to widen the doorway. Okay? Sure.
Last questions?
Oh, it was really wonderful being here with you today.